Good evening. I am Angie Rodriguez, and I would like to welcome you to tonight's Poetry Out Loud competition. For over a decade, Reading High School has had a rich tradition of competing and excelling at Poetry Out Loud, a national recitation poetry contest. We began participating in 2007, the second year of the program. I was lucky enough to be a part of the program's launch at Reading High School, along with my colleagues Paige Seckler, Jerry Corenda, and Janet King. Since that time, we have sent 7 students to the state competition, and Reading High School has represented the state of Pennsylvania in the 2011 and 2012 national competitions. We placed within the top 10 in the nation both years. While the talent of our students is undeniable and definitely worthy of celebration, it is also important to note the effect the program has had on the nearly 10,000 students who have participated over the years at the classroom level. Each of these students spent time poring over thousands of poems in order to find 2 poems with which they connect. They then spent months not only memorizing these poems, but becoming intimately familiar with the nuances of meaning, which they bring to life through the art of oral interpretation. In the words of one high school participant, I found a poem I could call my own. I was surprised by how all my classmates got into their poems as if they had written the words they were reciting. Our participants tonight have completed the same process, reciting in the classrooms and winning at the classroom level. I am sure you will enjoy their performances as they breathe life into the poems through their own unique interpretations. Our program tonight consists of 2 parts. In part 1, each competitor will recite 1 poem. Judging consists of physical presence, voice and articulation, dramatic appropriateness, evidence of understanding, and overall performance. Then, the scores for the first round of performances will be tallied during intermission, and the top 8 finishers will compete with their second poem in the second round. Both poems, however, count toward the final total score. At the end of the competition, the winner and the runner-up will be announced. Before we begin our program, I would like to thank our judges tonight. Jill Sheets, a local newspaper reporter and poet. John Ganser, a stage director for various professional amateur local performances. Heather Thomas, a past poet laureate of Berks County. And Alberto Casacedo, English department chair at Albright College. Also, I would like to thank Paige Seckler, department chair of the Reading High School English department, who will be our accuracy judge. Susan Wagner will be our prompter, and Lori McGovern from the Reading High School math department will be tallying the scores. Additionally, I would like to thank Kyle Brown for taping tonight's event, Mr. Hughes and the yearbook staff for their documentation of this evening, Christine Doig and the FCS classes who provided the refreshments tonight, our English department teachers who had their classes participate in the program, and the National Honor Society greeters for their help tonight as well. A special thanks to Susan Wagner and Jerry Corenda for their work as Poetry Out Loud coaches. And now, I'd like to remind you that this is a live performance. Please make sure that your phones are off and not on vibrate. Please refrain from talking during the performances or doing anything else that might be distracting. If you must leave the auditorium, do so between performances. Also, please do not use flash photography during the performances, as it can be extremely distracting for our students. We want to give each participant an equal chance to do his or her best. Before we begin, I would like to mention that there was an omission in the program for tonight. We have a 16th reciter, Darvin Polanco Pena. I'm sure you will enjoy tonight's competition. We certainly enjoy preparing for it and delight in sharing it with you. And now we will begin. Our first contestant tonight is Angelina Olinger.
Happiness by Jane Kenyon. There's just no accounting for happiness, or the way it turns up like a prodigal who comes back to the dust of your feet, having squandered a fortune far away. And how can you not forgive? You make a feast in honor of what was lost, and take from its place the finest garment, which you have saved for an occasion you cannot imagine. And you weep night and day to know that you were not abandoned, that happiness saved its most extreme form for you alone. No. Happiness is the uncle you never knew about, who flies a single-engine plane onto the grassy landing strip, hitchhikes into town, and inquires at every door to find you, asleep, mid-afternoon, as you so often are during the unmerciful hours of your despair. It comes to the monk in a cell. It comes to the woman sweeping the street with a birch broom. It comes to the child whose mother has passed out from drink. It comes to the dog chewing a sock, to the lover, and to the basket maker. It even comes to the clerk stacking cans of carrots in the night. It even comes to the boulder and the perpetual shade of pine barrens, to the rain falling on the open sea, to the wineglass, weary of holding wine.
Next, we will have Joanna Belsa.
The Obligation to Be Happy by Linda Paston. It is more onerous than the rights of beauty or housework, harder than love. But you expected of me casually, the way you expect the sun to come up, not in spite of rain or clouds, but because of them. And so I smile, as if my own fidelity to sadness were a hidden vice, that downward tug on my mouth, my old suspicion that health and love are brief irrelevancies, no more than laughter in the warm dark strangled at dawn. Happiness. I try to hoist it on my narrow shoulders again, a knapsack heavy with gold coins. I stumble around the house, bump into things. Only Midas himself would understand.
Aaron Oliver is our next performer.
Violins by Rowan Ricardo Phillips. He never saw a violin, but he saw a lifetime of violence. This is not to presume that if he had simply seen a violin, he would have seen less violence. Or that living among violins, as though they were boulangeries or toppling stacks, like other glazed goods, like in adult fiction, would have made the violence less crack and more cocaine, less, of course, and more why, God, oh why? More of one thing. Does it rhyme with one thing? A swill of stars, does it rhyme with star? A posse of poets, does it rhyme with poet? We are all in prison. This is the brutal lesson of the 21st century. Swilled like a sour stone through the vein of the beast, who watches you while you eat, our eternal host, the chummed fiddler, the better tomorrow, MMX VI.
Symphony Mitchell is our next contestant.
Barter by Sarah Teasdale. Life has loveliness to sell, all beautiful and splendid things. Blue waves whitened on a cliff, soaring fire that sways and sings, and children's faces looking up, holding wonder like a cup. Life has loveliness to sell, music like a curve of gold, scent of pine trees in the rain, eyes that love you, arms that hold, and for your spirit still delight, holy thoughts that star the night. Spend all you have for loveliness, buy it, and never count the cost. For one white singing hour of peace, count many years' strife well lost. And for a breath of ecstasy, give all you have been or could be.
The next competitor is Luisana Cruz.
My Brother the Artist at 7 by Philip Levine. As a boy, he played alone in the fields behind our block. 6 frame houses, holding 6 immigrant families. The parents speaking only gibberish to their neighbors. Without the kids, they couldn't say, "Good morning," and be understood. Little wonder, he learned early to speak to himself, to tell no one what truly mattered. How much can matter to a kid of 7? Everything. The whole world can be his. Just after dawn, he sneaks out to hide in the wild, bleached grasses of August, and pretends he's grown up. Someone completes in himself without the need for anyone. A warrior from the ancient places our fathers fled years before. Those magic places. Kiev, Odessa, the Crimea, Port Said, Alexandria, Lisbon, the Canaries, Caracas, Galveston. In the damp grass, he recites the names over and over in a hushed voice while the sun climbs into the locust tree to waken the houses. The husbands leave for work. The women return to bed. The kids bend to porridge and milk. He advances slowly, eyes fixed, an animal or a god, while beneath him the earth holds its breath.
Paulina Ceballos will perform next.
Requests for Toy Piano by Tony Hoagland. Play the one about the family of the ducks, where the ducks go down to the river and one of them thinks the water will be cold. But then they jump in anyway and like it and splash around. No, I must play the one about the nervous man from Palestine in row 14 with a brown bag in his lap in which a gun is hidden in a sandwich. Play the one about the handsome man and woman standing on the steps of her apartment, and how the darkness and her perfume and the beating of their hearts conjoined to make them feel like leaping from the edge of chance. No, I should play the one about the hard rectangle of the credit card hidden in the man's back pocket, and how the woman spent an hour plucking out her brows, and how her perfume was made from the destruction of 100 flowers. Then, play the one about the flower industry in which the migrant workers curse their own infected hands from tossing sheaves of roses and carnations into the back of the refrigerated trucks. No. I must play the one about the single yellow daffodil standing on my kitchen table, whose cut stem draws the water upward so that the plant is flushed with the conviction that the water has been sent to find and raise it up from somewhere so deep inside the earth, not even flowers can remember.
Next, we will have Jeremiah Lubriel.
A thank you note by Michael Ryan for John Scoyles. My daughter made drawings with the pens you sent, line drawings that suggest the things they represent. Different from any drawings she at 10 had done, closer to real art, implying what the mind fills in. For her mother, she made a flower fragile on its stem. For me, a lion, calm, contained, but not a handsome one. She drew a line for me once before on a get well card and wrote, "I must be brave even when it's hard." Such love is healing, as you know, my friend. Especially when it comes unbidden from our children, despite the flaws they see so vividly in us. Who can love you as your child does? Your son, so ill, the brutal chemo, his looming loss, owning you now. Yet you would be this generous to think of my child. With the pens you sent, she has made, I hope, a healing instrument.
Hannah Mogford is our next performer.
Megan Married Herself by Caroline Bird. She arrived at the country mansion in a silver limousine. She had sent out invitations and everything. Her name written twice with ampersand in the middle. The calligraphy of coupling. She strode down the aisle to At Last by Etta James, faced the celebrant like a keen soldier reporting for duty, her voice shaky, yet sure. I do. You may now kiss the mirror, applause, confetti. Every single one of the 140 guests deemed the service unimprovable. Especially the vows, so from the heart. Her wedding gown was ivory, pointedly off-white. After all, we've shared a bed for 32 years, she quipped in her first speech. I'm hardly virginal, if you know what I mean. No one knew exactly what she meant. Not a soul questioned their devotion. You only had to look at them, hand cupped in hand, smiling out of the same eyes. You could sense their secret language, bone-deep, blended blood. Toasts were frequent, tearful. One guest eyed his wife, hovering harmlessly at the bar, and imagined what his life might have been if he had responded years ago to that offer in his head, "I am the only one who will ever truly understand you. Marry me, Derek. I love you. Marry me." At the time, he hadn't taken his proposal seriously. He recharged his champagne flute, watched the newlywed cut her 5-tiered cake, both hands on the knife. "Is it too late for us to try?" Derek whispered to no one as the bride glided herself onto the dance floor, taking turns first to lead, then to follow.
Our next reciter is Pristine Melendez.
They Are Hostile Nations by Margaret Atwood. In view of the fading animals, the proliferation of sewers and fears, the sea clogging, the air nearing extinction, we should be kind. We should take warning. We should forgive each other. Instead, we are opposite. We touch as though attacking. The gifts we bring, even in good faith, maybe warp in our hands to implements, to maneuvers. Put down the target of me you guard inside your binoculars. In turn, I will surrender this aerial photograph. Your vulnerable sections marked in red, I have found so useful. See, we are alone in the dormant field. The snow that cannot be eaten or captured. Here there are no armies. Here there is no money. It is cold and getting colder. We need each other's breathing, warmth. Surviving is the only war we can afford. Stay walking with me. There is almost time. If we can only make it as far as the possibly last summer.
Next, we will have Rania Tabarez.
A Locked House by W.D. Snodgrass. As we drove back, crossing the hill, the house still hidden in the trees, I always thought, a fool's fear, that it might have caught fire. Someone could have broken in, as if things must have been too good here. Still, we always found it locked tight, safe and sound. I mentioned that once as a joke. No doubt we spoke of the absurdity, to fear some door god's jealousy of our good fortune. From the farm next door, our neighbors saw no harm came to the things we cared for here. What did we have to fear? Maybe I should have thought. All such things rot, fall, barns, houses, furniture. We two are stronger than we were apart. We've grown together. Everything we own can burn. We know what counts. Some such idea. We said as much. We'd watched friends driven to betray, felt that love drained away some self they need. We'd said love, like a growth, can feed on hate we turn in and disguise. We warned ourselves that you might despise me, hate all we both loved best. None of us ever guessed. The house still stands, locked, as it stood untouched a good 2 years after you went. Some things passed in the settlement. Some things slipped away. Enough's left that I come back sometimes. The theft and vandalism were our own. Maybe we should have known.
Sincere Villarreal will be our next reciter.
The Salutation by Thomas Traherne. These little limbs, these eyes and hands which here I find, these rosy cheeks wherewith my life begins, where have ye been? Behind what curtain were ye from me hid so long? Where was, in what abyss, my speaking tongue? When silent I, so many thousand years beneath the dust, did in a chaos lie, how could I smiles or tears, or lips or hands, or eyes or ears perceive? Welcome, ye treasures, which I now receive. I that so long was nothing from eternity, did little think such joys as ear or tongue to celebrate or see, such sounds to hear, such hands to feel, such feet beneath the skies on such a ground to meet, new burnished joys which yellow gold pearls excel. Such sacred treasures are the limbs and boys in which a soul doth dwell. Their organized joints and azure veins more wealth include than all the world contains. From dust I rise, and out of nothing now awake. These brighter regions which salute mine eyes, a gift from God I take. The earth, the sea, the light, the day, the skies, the sun and stars are mine, if those I prize. Long time before I in my mother's womb was born, a God preparing did this glorious store, the world for me adorn. Into this Eden so divine and fair, so wide and bright, I come, his son and heir. A stranger here, strange things doth meet. Strange glories see, strange treasures lodged in this fair world would appear. But that they mine should be, who nothing was, that strangest is of all, yet brought to pass.
Our next contestant tonight is Mariana Vasquez.
The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I cannot travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other, is just as fair and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear, though as for that, the passing there had worn them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay, in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh somewhere, ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference.
Daniela Garcia is our next performer.
Love Letters by Diane Thiel. My mother wanted to learn some German for my father, and because her children could already speak a little. She was tired of dusting the stacks of books she couldn't read, tired of the letters she always had to ask him to translate. He was usually willing to translate the cards his mother had written in German. But sometimes there were other letters. And when he read them to her and the children, she had the same feeling she'd had with books before she learned to read when she was little. She said it bothered her a little that her own children would have to translate for her, that they could pick up the same books that were as Greek to her as they were German. She started learning it from her children and decided to leave my father letters. She wrote my father daily love letters and carefully placed them on the little table where they put things for the children, next to our favorite set of translations of fairy tales we first heard in German. She leaned one every day against his books, the white paper stark beside the dark books. But my father never answered her letters. Instead, he returned them with his German corrections in the margin, his little red marks, hieroglyphs for her to translate, as if she were one of the children. Maybe she was just one of the children in that house surrounded by rows of books. Maybe her whole life was a translation of what she imagined in the letters. The space between them made her that little girl wandering lost inside the German. Because her own children were half German, she built her life around those little books, translating the lines of her own letters.
Our next reciter is Molly Mogford.
Self-Portrait as So Much Potential by Chen Chen. dreaming of one day being fearless as a mango, as friendly as a tomato, merciless to chin and shirt front. Realizing I hate the word sip, but that's all I do. I drink so slowly and say I'm tasting it when I'm just bad at taking in liquid. I'm no mango or tomato. I'm a rusty yawn in a rumored ear. I'm an Arctic attic. Come Abel and ampersand in the slippery polar clutter. I am not the heterosexual neat freak my mother raised me to be. I am a gay sipper, and my mother has placed what's left of her hope on my brothers. She wants them to gulp up the world, spit out solid degrees, responsible grandchildren, ready to gobble. They will be better than mangoes, my brothers, though I have trouble imagining what that could be. Flying mangoes, perhaps. Flying mango-tomato hybrids. Beautiful sons.
Racel Diaz Hernandez will be our next reciter.
God's Grandeur by Gerard Manley Hopkins. The world is charged with the grandeur of God. It will flame out like shining from shook foil. It gathers to a greatness like the ooze of oil crushed. Why do men then now not wreck his rod? Generations have trod, and all is seared with trade, bleared, smeared with toil, and wears man's smudge and shares man's smell. The soil is bare now, nor can foot feel being shod. And for all this, nature is never spent. There lives the dearest freshness deep down things. And though the last lights off the black west went, oh, morning at the brown brink eastward springs, because the Holy Ghost over the bent world broods with warm breast and with bright wings.
Our final performer for the first round will be Darvin Polanco Peña.
Faith by David Baker. It was midday before we noticed it was morning. The boy cousins brought us a tray, soup and cheese, warm soda, and a soft cloth and candy for a fever. They wouldn't come in, the tray weighing between them. They stood like woodwork inside the doorframe. By afternoon, the old procession, silence at the lip of a dozen night travelers, tired and grieving. One by one, or pairs floating to the bed and back with a touching of hands like humming. And the one we gathered for drifting farther, for all the good we could do. She lay in her shadow. She looked to no one. Her daylilies bobbed open out in the wild blue sun, and the same bee kept nosing her window to reach them. Dusk. Even the boys were back, watching it try.
At this time, we'll begin our second round. Our first reciter will be Joanna Belsa.
Truth by Gwendolyn Brooks. And if sun comes, how shall we greet him? Shall we not dread him? Shall we not fear him after so lengthy a session with shade? Though we have wept for him, though we have prayed all through the night years, what if we wake one shimmering morning to hear the fierce hammering of his firm knuckles hard on our door? Shall we not shudder? Shall we not flee into the shelter, the dear thick shelter of the familiar propitious haze? Sweet is it to sleep in the coolness of snug unawareness. The dark hangs heavily over the eyes.
Aaron Oliver will recite next.
Harold's Chicken Shack, number 86, by Nate Marshall. We're trying to eliminate the shack. Kristen Pierce, Harold CEO and daughter of founder Harold Pierce. When I went to summer camp, the white kids had a tendency to shorten names of important institutions, make Northwestern University into NU, international relations into IR. Everybody started calling me Nate. Before this, I imagined myself Nathaniel A. Maybe even N. Armstead to big up my granddad. I wrote my whole name on everything. Eventually, I started unintentionally introducing myself as Nate. It never occurred to me that they could escape the knowing of my name's real length. As a shorty, most of the kids in my neighborhood couldn't say my name. McDaniel, Nickthaniel, MacDonald shot across the courts like wild heaves toward the basket. The subconscious visual of a chicken shack seems a poor fit for a national expansion. Harold's Chicken is easier. Sounds like Columbus's flag stuck into a cup of coleslaw. Shack sounds too much like home of poor people, like haven for weary, like building our own.
Next, we will have Symphony Mitchell.
A Song in the Front Yard by Gwendolyn Brooks. I've stayed in the front yard all my life. I want to peek at the back, where it's rough and untended and hungry weeds grow. A girl gets sick of a rose. I want to go in the backyard now, maybe down the alley, to where the charity children play. I want a good time today. They do some wonderful things. They have some wonderful fun. My mother snares, but I say it's fine. How they don't have to go in at 8:45. My mother. She tells me that Johnny may grow up to be a bad woman, and George will be taken to jail sooner or later, on account that last winter he sold her back gate. But I say it's fine. Honest, I do. And I'd like to be a bad woman too, and wear the brave stockings of night black lace and strut down the street with paint on my face.
Louisiana Cruz is our next performer.
A Locked House by W.D. Snodgrass. As we drove back, crossing the hill, the house still hidden in the trees, I always thought, a fool's fear, that it might have caught fire. Someone could have broken in. As if things must have been too good here. Still, we always found it locked tight, safe and sound. I mentioned that once, as a joke. No doubt we spoke of the absurdity to fear some dour god's jealousy of our good fortune. From the farm next door, our neighbors saw no harm came to the things we cared for here. What did we have to fear? Maybe I should have thought all such things rot, fall. Barns, houses, furniture. We two are stronger than we were apart. We've grown together. Everything we own can burn. We know what counts. Some such idea. We said as much. We'd watch friends driven to betray. Felt that love drained away some self they need. We said love, like a growth, can feed on hate we turn in and disguise. We warned ourselves that you might despise me, hate all we both loved best. None of us ever guessed. The house still stands, as it stood untouched a good 2 years after you went. Some things passed in the settlement. Some things slipped away. Enough's left that I come back sometimes. The theft and vandalism were our own. Maybe we should have known.
Next, we will have Paulina Ceballos.
I am learning to abandon the world by Linda Paston. I am learning to abandon the world before it can abandon me. Already, I have given up the moon and snow, closing my shades against the claims of white. And the world has taken my father, my friends. I have given up melodic lines of hills, moving to a flat, tuneless landscape. And every night, I give my body up, limb by limb, working upwards across bone towards the heart. A tree outside the window, which was simply shadow moments ago, takes back its branches, twig by leafy twig. And as I take my body back, the sun lays its warm muzzle on my lap, as if to make amends.
The next competitor is Jeremiah Lubriel.
Snow Day by Billy Collins. Today we woke up to a revolution of snow. Its white flag waving over everything. The landscape vanished. Not a single mouse to punctuate the blankness. And beyond these windows, the government buildings smothered, schools and libraries buried, the post office lost under the noiseless drift, the paths of trains softly blocked, the world fallen under this falling. In a while, I will put on some boots and step out like someone walking in water, and the dog will porpoise through the drifts, and I will shake a laden branch, sending a cold shower down on us both. But for now, I am a willing prisoner in this house, a sympathizer with the anarchic cause of snow. I will make a pot of tea and listen to the plastic radio on the counter, as glad as anyone to hear the news that the kitty corner school is closed, the ding-dong school closed, the all-aboard children's school closed, the hi-ho nursery school closed, along with, some will be delighted to hear, the toadstool school, the little sparrows nursery school, little stars preschool, peas and carrots day school, the Tom Thumb Child Center, all closed. And clap your hands, the Peanuts Play School. So this is where the children hide all day. These are the nests where they letter and draw, where they put on their bright miniature jackets, all darting and climbing and sliding. All but the few girls whispering by the fence. And now I am listening hard in the grandiose silence of the snow, trying to hear what those three girls are plotting. What riot is afoot? Which small queen is about to be brought down?
Hannah Mogford is our next reciter.
I Have a Time Machine by Brenda Shaughnessy. But unfortunately, it can only travel into the future at a rate of 1 second per second, which seems slow to the physicists and to the grant committees and even to me. But I managed to get there, time after time, to the next moment and to the next. Thing is, I can't turn it off. I keep zipping ahead. Well, not zipping. And if I try to get out of this time machine, open the latch, I'll fall into space, unconscious, then desiccated. And I'm pretty sure I'm afraid of that, so I stay inside. There's a window, though. It shows the past. It's like a television or a fish tank. But it's never live. It's always over. The fish swim in backward circles. Sometimes it's like a rearview mirror. Another chance to see what I'm leaving behind. And sometimes, like blackout. All that time wasted sleeping. Myself, age 8, whole head burnt with embarrassment at having lost a library book. Myself, lurking in a candled corner, expecting to be found. Charming. Me, holding a rose, though I want to put it down so I can smoke. Me, exploding at my mother, who explodes at me because the explosion of some dark star all the way back struck hard at mother's mother. I turn away from the window, anticipating a blow. I thought I'd find myself an old woman by now, traveling so light in time. But I haven't gotten far at all. Strange not to be able to pick up the pace as I'd like. The past is so horribly fast.
Christine Melendez is our next performer.
Planetarium by Adrian Rich. Thinking of Caroline Herschel, 1750 to 1848. Astronomer, sister of William, and others. A woman in the shape of a monster in the shape of a woman. The skies are full of them. A woman in the snow, among the clocks and instruments, or measuring the ground with poles in her 98 years to discover 8 comets. She, whom the moon ruled, like us, levitating into the night sky, riding the polished lenses. Galaxies of women there doing penance for impetuousness. Ribs chilled in those spaces of the mind. And I, virile, precise, and absolutely certain, from the mad webs of Uranusborg, encountering the nova. Every impulse of light exploding from the core as life flies out of us. Tycho whispering at last, let me not seem to have lived in vain. What we see, and seeing is changing the light that shrivels a mountain and leaves a man alive. Heartbeat of the pulsar heart sweating through my body. The radio impulse pouring in from Taurus. I am bombarded, yet I stand. I have been standing all my life in the direct path of a battery of signals, the most accurately transmitted, most untranslatable language in the universe. I'm a galactic cloud so deep, so involuted, that a light wave could take 15 years to travel through me, and has taken. I am an instrument in the shape of a woman trying to translate pulsations into images for the relief of the body and the reconstruction of the mind.
And our final reciter for the second round will be Racel Diaz Hernandez.
El Olvido by Judith Ortiz Cofer. It is a dangerous thing to forget the climate of your birthplace, to choke out the voices of dead relatives when in dreams they call you by your secret name. It is dangerous to spurn the clothes you were born to wear for the sake of fashion. dangerous to use weapons and sharp instruments you are not familiar with. Dangerous to disdain the plaster saints before which your mother kneels praying with embarrassing fervor that you survive in the place you have chosen to live. A bare, cold room with no pictures on the walls. A forgetting place where she fears you will die of loneliness and exposure. Jesus, Maria y Jose, she says, el olvido is a dangerous thing.
Okay, at this time, it gives me great pleasure to announce our 2018 Reading High School Poetry Out Loud champion. Our first place contestant is Hannah Mogford. Our first runner-up is Raysel Hernandez-Diaz. And at this time, we are going to give out certificates to the rest of the participants. First, if we could please have a round of applause for Angelina Olinger, Joanna Belsa, Aaron Oliver, Symphony Mitchell, Louisiana Cruz, Paulina Ceballos, Jeremiah Lubriel, Christine Melendez, Rania Tabarez, Sincere Villarreal, Mariana Vasquez, Daniela Garcia, and Molly Mogford. Okay, if we could just give them one more round of applause. They are all class competition winners. Thank you all very much for joining us tonight, and we hope you enjoyed the show.